Poi isolations. They're one of the most difficult tricks that we pick up in our flow journeys. They can take us weeks, sometimes months, sometimes even years to get down. But sometimes knowing why they're difficult also tells us how to make them easier to learn. Drex here from Drex Factor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And today, I am breaking down for you 3 tips for making learning isolations easier. But before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Fire Mecha, Flowfests, Flow Toys, Pyroterra Light Toys, and Ultra Poi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these amazing companies and the work that they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links down in the description of this video. And special thanks to the non-business friend of the channel, Pekka Pekkonen. Thank you so very much for supporting my channel, my work, and my mission. All right, so check it out. This is not a poi, this is a hoop. But, as you can see, I can isolate the hoop just as I can the poi. And I would argue that it's actually maybe a little bit easier to isolate the hoop than it is the poi. Why is that? That question actually came up in a recent lesson that I had with one of my private lesson students, and getting the answer to that question wound up opening an entire can of worms and giving me access to 3 tips that I think are going to help you get down your isolations. See, here's the thing. There are a bunch of ways that I know that make learning isolations a lot more difficult and that I try and steer my students away from. But then it dawned on me, if these things make learning isolations more difficult, then surely doing the opposite of them makes it easier to learn the isolations too then, right? And so with that knowledge in mind, I'm going to show you 3 things that, depending upon how you want to interpret them, either will make your life harder or easier when it comes to learning how to do isolations. So, tip number 1. Why exactly is it easier to isolate a hoop than it is a poi? Well, this comes down to the construction of the prop in general. See, when we're isolating a hoop, we're moving it through a space that it's uniquely suited for. See, the hoop is evenly weighted in all different directions that we're going to be isolating the hoop in. That means that when it comes right down to it, we just have to shift back and forth between letting it hang over our hand and rolling it around under our hand, like so. The hoop is already kind of helping us out with its own mass. Poi, however, is a different matter. Most sets of poi are weighted such that they have more weight on one end than they do on the other, as well as being larger on one end than they are on the other. This means that when we go to perform isolations, we're kind of having to wrestle the mass of the poi in some respects in order to get the move down. But there is a solution to this problem. Now, depending on who you are and what your spinning preferences are, you may already be on top of this one, but if you can find sets of poi that are evenly weighted, that is, the handles and the heads are either the exact same material or they're pretty similar and thus have pretty similar shape characteristics as well as weight characteristics, then guess what? This will give you a leg up on making those isolations happen, because now the poi is evenly weighted across the dimension that you're going to be doing the isolations in. A lot of people have found over the years that if they evenly weight their poi, the isolations get a lot simpler to do. But it has to be said that having evenly weighted poi is not a solution for everybody. I personally have just never felt right with that kind of weight distribution. So, there are other options. Tip number 2. Have you ever tried to isolate a short poi? It's really hard. You're having to adjust constantly, and of course, working inside of a circle this size, you're just having to keep the poi spinning really, really fast in order to keep up. When you lengthen the poi, it increases the size of the circle that you're performing the isolation around, and that means that you get to take more time in going through all those little micro movements that keep the isolation going. So, QED, make your poi longer. Of course, lengthening the poi tethers is a lot easier when you're working with sets of poi that are designed to let you either swap them out or lengthen them, like, say, these Emoja Contact poi from Lanternsmith. When you find the right length, though, you can just dial in something that feels buttery smooth and, more importantly, lets you slow down that isolation to the point where you can see every little movement that you need to do as you're doing it. But, of course, I am going on and on and on about how the poi are made, the materials they're made out of, the weight, the length, etc. At a certain point, it has to come down to just how you practice this stuff, right? And yes, in fact it does. Tip number 3. You want to know the most efficient way to learn all the pieces that you're going to need in order to get down those isolations? It's to practice your driving styles first. What exactly is a driving style? Basically, driving styles are different ways that we can arrange the momentum of the poi relative to that of the hand. We can just do big pendulums if we want to put as little momentum into the poi as possible. We can do extensions if we want to put slightly more momentum into the poi. And we can do flowers if we want to add the highest amount of momentum for the poi relative to the hand. I'm a big fan of training people to go back and forth between driving styles in order to learn how to add and subtract energy from the poi on the fly. In particular, I'm a big fan of a drill wherein you start with a pendulum, and then you go around in an extension, and you do a pendulum, and then you go around in an in-spin flower, back to a pendulum, extension, pendulum, in-spin flower. You need to add and subtract momentum on the fly in order to make this work, which, guess what? That's exactly what you need to do when you're performing in isolation too. This is part of why I love giving this exercise to beginners, because it's like a bite-sized version of a drill that is going to help them in the long run be able to add and subtract that momentum in such a way that they're going to be able to get to those isolations much more easily. So, if you want the inside scoop on how to get to those isolations a lot quicker and a lot easier, practice those driving styles as soon as you possibly can and get adept at subtracting and adding momentum on the fly. It'll help you get here much, much sooner, I promise. Cool, I hope this was helpful to y'all out there. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to help other people find this video, and of course, to help my channel grow. And if you are looking to improve your isolation skills, you are in luck, because that is the theme of the Flow Circle for the month of November. The Flow Circle is a weekly exclusive lesson that's available only to my Patreon supporters, and the theme for the month of November is isolations. I'll give you basic exercises to get those isolations down, as well as some applications for where you can take those isolations when you finally have them in your muscle memory. Plus which, we'll talk about things like hybrids, as well as all kinds of cool things like isolated weaves and the like too. You can sign up over at patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi. The first lesson is available now. This video would not be possible without my amazing supporters on Patreon. In particular, I'd love to give a shout out to my Flow patrons who are listed on screen right now. You all rock. Thank you so much. And if you out there watching enjoy this content that I make and you'd like to see me make more of it, the best way to do that is to head on over and support me at Patreon over at patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and sign up, because there's a lot of awesome rewards available there too. So go check that out, support the channel, please and thank you. And if you would like to check out some of my favorite isolation-based poi tricks, I did a video of my top 5 favorites that I'll go ahead and link to down in the description as well as up on screen. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to get out and flow yourselves today, and I'll see you with a new video very, very, very soon. Take care now. Peace.